Hi guys, it's Karen Marchetti, and I'm gonna share a little, mini tutorial with you. We're just gonna do a stitch sample using these two rulers. These are the 2021 Quilting with Confidence rulers, 3x6, 4x8. The 3x6 has 1/2 inch and 1 inch little circles, and the really cool thing about these is both of these arcs, the curves are exactly the same. So whether you want to stitch the outside or the inside, it's the same curve. And this is the 4x8, 1.5 inch circle and a 2 inch circle. Again, this curve and this curve are the same. They are slightly different because they're from different size circles when you get the arc. But I hope you can see this. There's just a slightly deeper curve to the 3x6 one. So again, it's not really a how to quilt this. It's more how to use these rulers. So I'd love to share that with you. Okay, so I have this little 10-inch square of fabric, and I have the two rulers, and I'm going to just use that curve that's on it to mark a couple lines. So I'll put that one like that, and then I think I want the bigger one right there, and then maybe the bigger one here. And this is just I'm not actually stitching these lines. The circles are going to be lined up. I may stitch a couple of them, we'll see. But anyway, that's for me to line up the circles on these lines. So let's do one more here. Maybe that long. And then one more at the very bottom. Okay, so I just marked these 4 lines. And now I'll put some fabric on the machine, and I'll take this over there and we'll stitch some circles. Okay, so I have basted around the edge of the fabric. You'll see I have an extra basting line out here. That's just, this is a wool bat, and if I'd only quilted to the edge of it, it would pop up like this over. So I just quilted an extra line to keep that out of my way. So I'm going to come up on this line, and I hope you can see this. I'm using a golden yellow thread. Hopefully it will show up fairly decent on the pink. I'm hoping. So this first line I'm going to stitch. So I'm just using the edge of that ruler, and I'm going to stop right about there because that's where my pen got thicker, so I know that that's where I stopped. And nope, I used the bigger one. I can't even remember from there to here. See, there's another good reason why you like both curves. I'm actually hitting my clamps up here, so I can just use this side of the ruler just as easily as the other side. So it's really nice to have that double-sided curve. So there we go. So now you'll notice on these rulers there's these echo lines. That's because each one of those is a 1/4 inch. So if I put the foot right here, I'm actually a 1/4 inch away, because the first 1/4 inch is the edge of your hopping foot. Because from the edge of your hopping foot to your needle is 1/4 inch. So if I just stitch right here, the needle is a 1/4 inch away from this edge. And if I move this up to that first line in the ruler, I'm stitching a 1/2 inch away. And if I move it all the way up to this second line, I'm actually stitching 3/4 inch away. And that's what I want. So I'm just going to follow this along to right about there, and then use my other ruler. And I'm going to go off the edge, but I'm not worried about that because it's fine. I just want to show you how we make that echo. So now I've created a little area of rest where there'll be no stitching. So now I'll come down here to this second line, and I'll stop right on the line because this is where I want to do the circles on the ruler. So I'm going to start with the smaller ruler with the 1-inch circle. So I'm going to put my needle up and I slide it right on like that. See how easy that was? And you'll notice there are little registration marks on 3 sides of the circle. So you can actually use 2 of them to line up your side, and then that one on the side of the circle to line it up on the line that you want to stitch. So I'm going to start with a half circle, and I have to come back to right about there. I'm going to shut my my machine off, just stop my needle from going up and down. It's advisable to stitch with rulers in regulated. You can do it in constant motor, but you would have to turn it really, really slow. Okay, so once we've stitched that first one, we want to move the ruler over. And again, you can use any of the sides that you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter as long as you're staying lined up somewhat with that center line. Okay, so now I'll do this next one. And you have to backtrack on one side of the circle to make it continuous. So I'm going to stop there, put my needle up, take the ruler off, and I'm switching to the larger ruler because I want to do the 1.5-inch circle. Okay, again, make sure I'm butted right up to the edge of that. Make sure I'm on my center line, and we'll stitch the next size. Okay, put my needle down, move that over, make sure I'm lining up with that center line. Whoops, I went a little off, and that's okay, it happens. So right here, I'm going to come back, and I'm just going to echo back over that. And this little spot that I missed, after I'm done, I'll rip out those 3 little stitches. It's not a big deal. Let me switch to the larger circle. So this is the 2-inch one. And what you need to realize is the bigger the circle gets, it takes a little more control. And I know that sounds weird, but the smaller the circle is, the easier it is to stitch. The larger it is, you have to kind of move your hand around the ruler just a little bit to adjust where the weight is. And again, we're not holding these rulers super... we're not pushing down like this because then you won't be able to move the machine. But you are holding them with a little bit of pressure. So now I'll switch back to the 1.5. And I'll hold it this way so you can see if you want to hold the ruler this way. So now I'll switch to 1.5. And as long as you don't do what I just did, I shimmy that ruler ever so slightly. Probably because I'm talking and stitching. But if you shimmy it, you have to take a little more time coming back around that other side. Alright, so now we're going back to the 1-inch because I wanted the circles to kind of go from smaller to larger. Okay, so now line that up. And we'll stitch a 1-inch. Come back around. And then we'll just go off the edge with this side. Okay, so now I'll come down, take this off, I'll stitch down to this next line, and I'll stitch all the way back, using a variation of the same circles. But you have to kind of be careful as we get to the other side. The lines are kind of close, so I want to make sure if I'm doing larger ones, I do them over here where I have more space. So that's, well, yeah, let's start with the 2. That's what I'll do. I'll just start with the 2-inch here. Okay, make sure I'm lined up. I don't know why, I just like starting with a half circle. I think it keeps me, it's easier for me to line it up just using the edge. Now we'll do another 2-inch. Okay, let me take this off and switch it to the 1.5 inches. Make sure that I'm butted up against that Make sure my line is centered over here. So now I'm going to stitch down to this bottom one. And again, this one's right off the edge, but it's okay because we're going to echo this one as well. So you see how I have the ruler, the needle is on that drawn line, and I have the ruler up against the foot. That is the 1/4 inch away. That's why I said that the first row is always using your foot. That first 1/4 inch, not the first row. The first 1/4 inch is always just using the edge of your hopping foot. And then, I see I didn't stitch right on that line, and that's fine, because once I remove the line, only you and I know that the line was there. Okay, so again, I'm going to make a 3/4 inch echo along this. And of course it goes off the edge, so that's fine. So now what I want to do is kind of put a background fill in here using the edge of this curve so that it looks like it's kind of moving. So I'm going to come over here and do this larger section first. Okay, and I'm just going to, you know what, I should mark a line. I should definitely mark a line because it'll make my life easier keeping this straight. So I'm just going to mark a center line, just like that. And as we move up, I'll do the same in the other sections, and I'll show you why. Because on this ruler, right here, hope you can see it. These are just stickies. They're little grip stickies. But right here in the ruler, there's a center line. So as I'm stitching, I can keep these lines perfectly straight. So here's another thing. Oh, I just put some oil on there. I'm ambidextrous, so I can stitch with this hand or with this hand. A lot of people can't do that. So most people like to move the machine with their right hand and hold the ruler with their left hand. So we would be going this way. So I will try to do it that way since that's the norm for most people. So I want these lines to be a 1/2 inch apart. So I'm going to line that first line of the ruler up with the line I stitched. Okay. So come over here. Line it up with the first line marked on the ruler. Make sure my center line is marked and come back. And then I just kind of really slowly backtrack around those pebbles that we stitched, or those circles that we stitched. Come back down, stitch over, line up that first line. Again, each time I move the ruler, I line up this line and this center line. There you go. This center line on that, the marked line that I just put there for my center reference. Okay, so we just finished that row, and you can kind of see a little bit of the curvature. It's a little hard here because the lines are shorter, but what I want to do in this little section down here is come back the other way. So since I'm going to stay as a right-handed person, what I'm going to do is line up my center line on the bottom edge of this and use the inside to stitch. Okay, so I'm just kind of guessing on that 1/2 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a little secret. I know on my machine is at 13 stitches per inch. 4 actual stitches is approximately 1/4 of an inch. So if you know your machine well, you can just count stitches. If you wanted to use this to measure, you'd have to stitch with your other hand. Let me move over. And it's not a bad idea to learn how to stitch with both hands, because it does make your life a little bit easier. Because you can see, if you wanted to stitch this right-handed, you're guessing on the actual spacing of the lines. Okay, so now we're going to sneak back up here, back up to this section right here, and I'm going to mark another center line. So that I can keep my ruler lined up. So another secret is, if I were stitching just 1/4 inch, I would just keep moving my ruler over and it'd be easier to measure coming the other direction. But it's just a good idea to try with both hands. And worst case, you can mark every single line ahead of time. So let me show you what that would look like. I mean, if you really can't stitch right-handed, I can go ahead and mark these at 1/2 inch, which would kind of look like this. Okay, if I wanted to go ahead and mark them all ahead of time and then just stitch on those lines, whichever works best for you. And try them all. See which one really does work best for you. Everybody stitches their own way. The only wrong way is what doesn't work for you. That's the only wrong way. Okay, so we finished that one. Now we're going to come up here and do the same thing through here. And I'm going to mark that center line again. And it's not really center, it's just a somewhat of a straight line so that I can know where to hold my ruler and keep it lined up. Okay, so now we're coming from the left again. Stitch along here. So we're on the first line of that ruler and on our center line. Okay, we have to do this last little section, and again, that's from the right. So I'm just going to line up right with the top. Oh, I'm stuck on the batting. Okay, come over here, and I'll throw one little extra one in over here on the end, right there. Okay, so let me tie off my thread. And I think this turned out super cool. You have movement in the background with these lines. And I'll zoom out so that you can see it much better. Let me remove these lines and I'll bring you back. So there is the full view. It's still a little damp, so that's why the color's off a bit. But I really love how this turned out. You have the curve this way, and then it curves this way and this way. It gives an illusion like there's a little bit of movement in the background. And just to show you how those circles work on those rulers. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a little more about how we use the rulers and how they make making those perfect circles. I mean, I've been hand guiding years, and if your mind isn't in it, getting a perfect circle exactly the same in a row like that can be difficult. So that's how these rulers really help you. So if you enjoyed it and you want to check out the rulers, they are available on gaml.com. See you again soon.